Amiga, do you ever feel caught between two worlds? You cherish your cultural background, but sometimes it clashes with the realities of raising a family in modern America. You might feel pressured to fulfill traditional expectations, yet you crave a life that allows you to be your true, authentic self. If you're a Latina mom nodding your head right now, I see you, and I get it. Balanced Motherhood is more than your average Mami coaching program. It's a supportive comunidad designed specifically for you. I understand the unique challenges you face navigating between generations and culturas while forging your own path as a mamá. Stop feeling like you have to choose between your roots and your future. Balanced Motherhood empowers you to create a life that celebrates your heritage, embraces your motherhood journey, and prioritizes your own happiness. Spots are limited. Don't miss out on this opportunity to connect with a supportive community and create a more balanced life. Visit the link in the show notes to join the waitlist for the next Balanced Motherhood cohort. I can't wait to meet you. Hola, hola, amiga. Breastfeeding may not come naturally for many mamás, and it can be a challenging journey. Trust me, when I had D, my firstborn, I thought that breastfeeding was going to come natural. But unfortunately, my breastfeeding journey with my first son was unlike no other. I had shared this in my blog and on some posts on social media, but I decided to completely wean him off of breastfeeding at 5 weeks postpartum. And then through this guilt and grief that I experienced 5 weeks later, so at 10 weeks postpartum, I decided to relactate. Now that I reflect on my breastfeeding journey with my first one, and now that I have M, my second born, I am exclusively breastfeeding him. And I think that I didn't allow my body for me to fully know its potential, for me to really trust my body that it can do this. But I also recognize that breastfeeding is not easy. It is not easy. It is a job in itself. And without the right care and support and the village, I understand why moms decide to not breastfeed. So the purpose of this episode is to understand that there is the right professional support out there, that you can receive the right care and attention that you need if your goal is to breastfeed. And in honor of the inaugural year of La Semana de Lactancia Latina, or Latina Latinx Breastfeeding Week, we welcome Kassi Reyes on the show today. Kassi is an International Board Certified Lactation Consultant, or an IBCLC, and a registered nurse. She has her own YouTube channel, which that is how I found her. I found her because I was looking for resources about relactation. She really understands how crucial good support is to a growing family. And as a lactation consultant and a new mom herself, she is familiar with the rewards and challenges that come along with learning how to feed your little one. We recorded this episode like 6 days before I gave birth. So you may hear that I am expecting or that I'm pregnant. Know that I already had our second baby boy, Mr. M, and I am loving my breastfeeding journey this time around, but I also am so thankful about my breastfeeding experience with my firstborn. Just like each and every pregnancy is different, so will your breastfeeding journey. So I am very excited for you to hear this episode. And if you have any personal breastfeeding story that you'd like to share, feel free to send me a DM on Instagram, or you can email me at podcast@vivalamami.com, and we can definitely connect. And I can probably have you on another episode as part of the VLM Spotlight series. Anyway, here's my conversation with Kassi Reyes, an IBCLC and YouTuber, and we discuss all things related to breastfeeding and pumping as well. Welcome to the Viva la Mami podcast. I am your host, Jessica Cuevas. I am a mother of two on a mission to help redefine the meaning of motherhood as a modern Latina mom. Motherhood can be a complex journey, interwoven in two identities that often make us feel ni de aquí ni de allá. Viva la Mami is committed to providing you with knowledge, tools, and support to navigate the challenges and triumphs of motherhood as Latina moms. On the show, we'll be discussing culturally relevant topics that will help inform and empower you in whichever season you are in on your motherhood journey. We'll be joined by Latina moms, experts and professionals who can offer advice, practical tips, relatable stories, and honest conversations. So bring your cafecito as I invite you to be a part of this space as we create comunidad about the exciting and challenging parts of being a mommy. Ahora, vámonos. Hola, Kassi, how are you?
Hola, I'm so good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I am thrilled for you to be here. I love what you're doing. I love your platform. I've been following you for ever since like my 2-year-old was born, and all the resources that you shared are very, very helpful. And especially coming from an IBCLC Latina, I just feel like I need to bring this woman here on the Viva la Mami podcast just because you have a lot of insightful information that I feel like oftentimes our community isn't really aware about what IBCLCs do or the type of information that is given. And so I really appreciate you being here.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure.
So before we delve into the conversation, can you tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Kassi Reyes. I'm an International Board Certified Lactation Consultant. That's what those letters mean, the IBCLC. It's an international certification, which is really cool to me because I can work with families kind of everywhere in the world virtually, which is really great. And I got to the path I'm on by becoming a registered nurse first. And my background is that my father is from Chile. And when I was first a nurse, I was working in the Boston area and realized that I was kind of at a disservice because I didn't grow up speaking Spanish. And so I decided to move to Chile, and I ended up moving there for about 6 years so that I could learn Spanish and become fluent and be able to serve the Latino community. And it's been one of the best decisions I ever made. Not only was it a huge growth experience and I got to know my family there and my culture, and then coming back and being able to actually use the language skills that I acquired has just been opened so many doors for me in healthcare and then moving into lactation because I've always had a passion for working with babies and with mamas, and it's been amazing. It really has. And yeah, that's kind of how I got here. I was working at a clinic in Washington, D.C. called La Clínica del Pueblo, and my boss encouraged me to do the certification that I took for lactation consulting to kind of boost our numbers among our population. And that's what kind of got the ball rolling and got me down the path that I'm on now. So.
Yeah, that is great. What a great way for you to reclaim your culture, to go back to your roots, where your family comes from, and not only like you immersing yourself in the language, the culture that perhaps our parents didn't, raise us, or perhaps they didn't like pass that along, and it's none of their fault, right? I think that's just part of that generational shift and assimilation and things like that oftentimes our parents, out of survival, they have to do that, right? But it's also beautiful how you also help the community and bring awareness, and so that is great. That is awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a journey. And now I'm raising a daughter. My husband is from Honduras, and we're raising our daughter and trying to kind of navigate that path of meshing or like helping her learn about her culture and trying to teach her the language from early on when we're really surrounded by a lot of the English language. So that's
Yeah.
been an interesting thing to navigate too.
Yes, it is interesting. It's like almost like your household can be fully immersed in the culture and language, but as soon as they step outside, it's like a different world. And it's really hard to navigate that too. And it
Yeah.
also depends on where you live, around your neighborhood or community. Yeah, that definitely brings a couple obstacles, but we
Yeah.
can, as long as we are aware and intentional of our parenting, I think it makes it worth, raising them the way that we wish. You did mention what helped you kind of start becoming an IBCLC, but what really sparked your interest in creating your platform?
Yeah, so I had just started a private practice when I was in Washington, D.C. when the pandemic started. And people weren't wanting lactation consultants or anyone extra in their household at that time. And so things just kind of leveled out, and I was seeing a need that people, I mean, babies were still being born and people were still needing lactation support. And it was really hard to get that in-person support. And I just decided to start my YouTube channel to get good evidence-based information out there and reach these families that were struggling and looking for support and looking for good information, but unable to access in-person support. So I got my channel going and it really took off. And I also started doing more virtual visits, which has helped me reach families all over the world, which has been really cool. And it's really been surprising to me to see how the channel took off and the impact that it's having on a lot of families. So I'm glad
Yes.
I made that decision. It was a good thing that came out of a crazy situation.
So I did mention that your YouTube channel specifically provides a lot of insightful information about breastfeeding, also pumping, which is great. I feel like oftentimes we don't really know much about pumping, and we'll delve into
Yeah,
that
sure.
later on. And so so part of my story, and we talked about this earlier before the recording, is like, and I've shared this with my listeners and even in my blog, that I went through a relactation journey. So my whole intention was to breastfeed, exclusively breastfeed my first son when he was born back in 2021, which was like the peak of the pandemic. And I thought that I had it all, right? You just think that it's all natural. You think it's like,
Yep.
you know, kind of perfect, but as we all experience after the hospital stay, things just go all over, right? You just don't know what to
Yes.
expect. And so, yeah, like I had a really horrible first 5 weeks, and I was given different opinions, different suggestions. I did go to like some lactation consultants at the hospital, and even within that same hospital, there were two philosophies. And so I felt like super overwhelmed. My family as well was like kind of like influencing me to like feed my
Yeah.
baby formula. And my family, like, and even my immediate circle, like, I've never seen a baby being put on the breast. Never. It's all
Wow.
bottle feeding. It's all like formula feeding. And I'm like, that's fine, but I knew that what I wanted, right? I had a specific
Yeah.
goal. But I was very vulnerable too. Like the first 5 weeks, you're just going through these like rush of hormones, adjustments and sleep deprivation. And yeah, it was not good. And so I decided to stop, like fully cold turkey, like stop.
Wow.
And for me though, like I knew that I wanted to breastfeed, and I went through this like grieving process immediately after. And I'm like, this isn't me. I just know that I wanna, still provide some breast milk to my son. And when I had my 6 weeks postpartum visit, like I talked to my midwife and I'm like, I don't think I'm feeling well. She's like, okay, well, try to seek help. If you ever want to come back, come back. And then like at 9 weeks postpartum, I came back and I'm like, I need help. I just want to do this again. I need to seek an IBCLC. Do you have any recommendations? And during that time, during those like 6 to 9 weeks postpartum, I was like doing research, and I found you, and you literally have a YouTube video about what it's like to relactate. And I didn't even
Yes.
know that this thing was even true. Like I've always been told from my family que cuando te sick like you're done. Like once you dry up, you're done breastfeeding. But even grandmas
Right.
can relactate after having kids after like so
Yes,
long, right?
anyone can relactate. And
Anyone.
so people don't know a lot about this.
Yes,
Exactly. Yes.
yes.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so you were kind of part of my like inspiration and kind of, I know that we were just meeting each other today, but I feel like, you were part of my relactation journey. So I want to thank you for providing all of those resources because,
Oh my
yeah, like
gosh. I'm
not
so
only
honored to be part of it.
yeah, like not only did you provide a lot of like insightful information, right? And just like information that I wasn't even aware of, but I also believe that representation matters. And I know that you have a couple videos on like Spanish as well to, serve the Spanish speaking community, which I'm really thankful for as well. And so kind of going all of that with my story and just representation, right? Like I have noticed though, like through my experience, that there isn't a lot of representation within the BIPOC community, but specifically the Latino community within IBCLCs.
Yeah.
And it may be just me. It's crazy because I live in the Chicago area, you would think. But why do you think that there's a lack of representation?
Wow. I think there's a lot to unpack there in that question because we just covered a huge amount. And I think everything you just said is like so worth speaking to this community about. First of all, your experience as a new mother and dealing with lactation. Lactation is so hard in the first 4 weeks. I always tell people if you can make it through the first 4 to 5 weeks, it does tend to get easier. But also in the Latino community, we don't have a lot of role models. We don't see a lot of our mothers and grandmothers who have breastfed, and there is a lot of pressure to like, ¿por qué no le das la pata? Why don't you just give formula? It's so much easier. You're suffering. Like, let someone else feed the baby so you can sleep. And everyone has good intentions, but that unfortunately, even a bottle or two here and there, if it's not medically necessary, of course, sometimes babies need formula and we're happy it exists for those babies who need it. But sometimes just that mentality of like, why don't you just give formula can really put setbacks in the way of the goals that we have as parents for our babies. And then, oh, lactation is so emotionally tied for us. So it's like what happened to you is the experience of a lot of families when they do decide to stop their lactation journey. A lot of parents experience grief over that. And so I love that you're sharing your experience because I think it's the experience of a lot of people, and people don't understand why they're feeling so bad emotionally postpartum about lactation when their family might not understand why it's so important to them.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think that kind of ties into why maybe more Latinos or Latinas aren't seeking this out as a profession, because maybe if you didn't have a successful journey and you have all this grief and maybe shame over that it didn't work out, maybe you don't even have it on your mind that you want to support other people through it. So that's one thing. And then there's more systemic things, like it's really difficult to get the certification. It's really expensive. It takes a lot of internship hours that are usually unpaid. There's different routes to become a lactation consultant, but most of them require between 500 and 1,000 hours of internship time, which is huge. It's huge for working families. I mean, it's such an obstacle. And then if you're able to get through that, even the exam itself is very expensive. And so it certainly isn't easy. There's a lot of roadblocks, I think, in place to get more of the BIPOC community and specifically Latinos involved in the lactation world as a profession.
As far as with seeking support to an IBCLC, how can Latinas find one so that way an IBCLC can help them achieve their breastfeeding goals? And when do you think is like a good time to seek this kind of level of professional support?
I wish more people were asking that question, because just like you said, you get out of the hospital and you're like, now what do I do? And I'm sleep deprived and emotional, and and you don't know where to look for support, and you don't even have the energy to look for someone. So I always say look for someone when you're pregnant. Look for someone third trimester, maybe set up a breastfeeding class, set up a prenatal visit so that you can work with someone. That's an easy visit to do virtually. So usually you can talk to an IBCLC and just talk about your goals, set up a plan to help you meet them, talk about possible barriers of or challenges that might come up towards reaching your goals. I think that that is key, is to find someone before you need them, because we all think it's going to be easy and natural, and a lot of times you're surprised in the postpartum at how difficult it really is, and how much help you really will need.
And as far as finding one, is there kind of like a directory or is it kind of word of mouth? Or do you feel like it just depends on the person and the region in which they live in?
Both. I mean, there is a directory, and I can
Oh,
share that link with you. It's a directory for the like governing body of IBCLC, so that you can find one anywhere near you. But it is really dependent on the region you live in, if there's someone local or not. But there's so many great virtual resources now too. A lot of good support can be gained from support groups too, like La Leche League and Baby Cafe, and a lot of pediatricians' offices, depending on where you live. Pediatrician or OB midwife offices may have lactation consultants in office, or they might be able to refer you to someone local.
and that's what happened with me. Like my midwife knew someone that kind of specialized in induced lactation and relactation. And so
That's
I'm very
amazing.
thankful. Yeah, I'm very thankful for her that she knew that specific contact and she came over to our house and yeah, she was all part of the process too, which is great.
That's so amazing. That's such a cool specialty too. I mean, we all have our little things that we're interested in, and I think it's all fascinating, but we all kind of hone in on one thing that's really interesting to us, and specialize in that. So it's so cool that you found someone near you that specialized in relactation.
And as far as with like, we talked about finding one, and once you
Mhm.
do you feel that oftentimes people think that IBCLCs are expensive? Because to be honest, I thought that that was the case. I thought
Yeah.
that this was like something that is either optional, right? But it's more so like a privileged service, kind of like a la carte type service. And but yeah, I didn't realize that, there are many ways in connecting with an IBCLC that isn't like exclusively just them coming to your home. So you did talk
Yes.
about virtual, right? La Leche League. Can you kind of explain all of those different accessible programs?
Sure. Yeah, so depending on what type of support that you end up needing, it depends on the cost, of course. There are awesome free resources like La Leche League and Baby Cafe are free support groups that are all over the place, and they're less like individualized care from an IBCLC who's helping you problem solve and come up with a care plan. But support groups can be really awesome. You can get really good tips from other parents going through similar things, and even just the motivation you need to keep going. So free resources and support groups can be huge for helping people. And then there's also office visits, like I mentioned. Sometimes pediatricians and OBs might have someone in their office, so that might be tied into your OB visit, and it might be free or low cost. Then virtual visits are usually lower cost than home visits, and home visits tend to have the higher cost for our services, which just means that we would come to your house. You don't have to go anywhere. A lactation consultant comes to you, usually with a portable baby scale, and they'll be weighing your baby before and after feeding and coming up with a personalized care plan. But all of them can be beneficial services. And then I want to say that it makes me sad that we are in the mindset of like support from a lactation consultant is a luxury, because
Mhm.
it's a medical necessity, and it's by law supposed to be 100% covered by health insurance. Health insurance companies make it very difficult and put up a lot of obstacles and deny a lot of claims, and make it such a headache for a new parent who's like not ready to be sending in appeals, and and fight for their right to have that coverage, but it should be covered by insurance. There should be no cost sharing, so there should be no co-pays or deductibles applied. It should just be covered. So at least like if we can get the word out there that it's your right to have lactation coverage. If you have insurance, if you have health insurance, then you can be finding out ahead of time about what your coverage options are through your insurance.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Are all of these services covered through health insurance? And
They should be.
they should be. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. And are there any kind of like policies related to protection? Is there a way to reference legislation or whatever?
Yeah. I'm actually going to send you a resource from the National Women's Law Center, and they give a whole toolkit for how to write an appeal letter. And it's basically like you just plug in your information because they know that parents don't have time to be writing appeal letters. So if you submit a claim to insurance and it's denied, you can use this toolkit to kind of help you state all that information to your insurance and hopefully get that decision overturned.
Okay. Okay. That's good to know. Wow. Yeah, because we were charged and we were
You were,
like,
yeah.
I was like, wait, I thought, I mean, it's my breast milk, like,
Yeah.
like, and this was at the hospital, like by lactation consultants, like just, and I was under the impression that it was just like a free service because it was part of insurance, and nope.
Oh my
We
gosh.
were charged, and it's just so
Separately.
disappointing, because like I can't
Uh,
even imagine, like we were able to afford it or whatever, but like I can't even imagine for like families that don't have the means, right? Who think that they're already covered. And kind of going off of that, does like Medicaid, is that something different or is it only through private insurance?
it should be covered, but each state's Medicaid is different, and
Yeah.
what they consider support is sometimes different. So they might consider like, oh, if you go to WIC, then you have lactation coverage, and it's not the same as working with an IBCLC. So there's a lot of work to be done there. But oh, and another thing that I wanted to mention is that breast pumps should be covered by insurance for each pregnancy. So you should get a free breast pump through insurance for each pregnancy. And I'm so surprised by that experience that you had of getting charged separate for lactation services from the hospital. And I don't want that to scare people from like accepting lactation help at hospitals, because every hospital is different. And some hospitals tie it in, most hospitals I think that I've worked at tie it into their birth package. So it just gets billed to your insurance all as part of the birth. So hopefully, I'm really hoping that people don't have that similar experience that you did. That's really,
I
really
know.
disheartening to me.
It is.
Uh,
Yeah. And as a first-time mom and who really doesn't really know much about the hospital system too, like it's,
right.
I guess I didn't advocate for myself. My husband was like, what is going on? Like, I guess we didn't ask questions and followed up, which we should have, but we thought it was part of the process.
The medical system's so complicated, and I really do feel for people who are navigating it, because it's a headache from a patient standpoint, like even from a provider standpoint, trying to understand it is crazy.
It is. It is. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. Now I know for
Yeah, yeah.
next
Next
time.
time,
Yes.
which is
Oh,
soon.
yes, it's coming up. Yes. And so let's talk about pumping, because you did mention about for every pregnancy, a parent qualifies to get a free pump through insurance. And so kind of going off of like that,
Yeah.
is there like kind of like a preferred pump? I know that there's so many websites now where you can order pumps or you can call and they kind of give you a list, but they just give you a list and it's like,
Yeah.
how do you know which one's the right one? It's so overwhelming. And through your YouTube channel, like you provide a lot of like different pumps, which is very helpful because you see like the mechanisms and like the different ways of
Yeah.
using it. I don't want to kind of sponsor any specific pump here, but overall, what kind of pump should moms be looking for when they're choosing one through insurance?
And I'm so excited to delve into this because I love the world of pumping. I don't even know why, because I didn't enjoy pumping myself, but I love talking about pumping. So not all breast pumps are created equally. There are so many different options out there and it can be really overwhelming. But what each person needs isn't like a cookie cutter answer. There's not one best pump for everyone, but it really depends on your goals and what's going on with your lactation journey too. So like say you have a baby in the NICU who isn't able to directly latch, or if your plan is to exclusively pump, you might need to start out with a hospital grade pump, which those are super powerful pumps, which usually you don't buy one for yourself, but you might rent from a hospital or a lactation center or something. And then if you're pumping for like back to work, or you're including pumping in your lactation journey as like once in a while to have a bottle for baby when you go out, or to boost your supply if you're having supply concerns, where you want to look for is a double electric pump usually. And even those aren't all created equally. I don't know. I'm sure you've seen, even on my channel, there's like all these wearable pumps now that are completely worn in your bra and completely wireless and everything. The wearable pumps aren't really, they're convenient for once in a while use, but they're not always the best for like building a supply or protecting a supply. So we want to look for a double electric pump, usually things like the Spectra. I know we're not like sponsoring, and I don't like to sponsor brands either, but Spectra, Zomi has some good pumps out. You can look at my channel and get some ideas of my thoughts on some of the pumps that are out there, but looking for a double electric breast pump. And then one of my favorite tools, which shocked me when I was in my lactation journey, was a manual pump. And that is just single-sided. You do the pumping. It's not electric, but you have so much more control over what you're doing, and you can like really use the other hand to massage. And I found that I got great output with a manual pump. So those are inexpensive. Those are like $20 or $30. So if you can, I would get that kind of not with insurance and just have it as an extra tool, and then use your insurance to get your double electric pump, which are usually like a couple $100s.
Yeah. And thank you for providing all those different categories, because a lot of people think that a pump is either, the convenient ones, the wearables,
Yeah.
and I'm a part of like all of these different like Facebook groups, and everyone swears by this particular wearable, and I bought it. That thing didn't work. Like it just,
Oh my gosh.
and I think it just depends on the person, right? Their body and how effective it is, I guess, but you often
Yep.
get influenced by the information that is shared by like people from Facebook groups who are not necessarily experts. And that's what makes it difficult, right? Because you get influenced by them. And so what would you say to that?
Yeah, so I'm gonna go back to like, if you can have a prenatal visit and you can talk about pumping with a lactation consultant too, like talk about your goals, talk about what pump is best for you and your goals. Get fitted for a flange. Not all nipple sizes are the same, and the part that goes around the nipple, which is called a flange, needs to be the proper size for you to get the milk out optimally. So all those things can be covered in a prenatal visit, and it's not one size fits all. So it's really helpful sometimes to just talk through your unique situation with someone.
And I actually have a question about nipple sizes, because I had
Okay.
no idea that everyone's nipples are different. Like,
Yes.
and I think I blame it on the cultural stuff sometimes. Like, I love being Latina, but there are some parts where I'm like, ugh, why don't we talk about like other parts of our bodies besides our hair, or besides like, I don't know, our eyes or whatever? Like, we don't talk about the private parts, and specifically boobs, right? Okay, so like when I ordered the pump, my first pump, I was like,
Okay.
"Oh, cool. Like this is cool." And I didn't open it because I heard like you don't necessarily have to pump immediately when baby is born. So I
Yep.
didn't open the box. It wasn't until my first lactation visit at the hospital when I was having issues that the lactation consultant was like, she recommended the triple feeding, by the way.
Ugh,
And
that's
yeah,
exhausting.
it is It is. And I was like, okay, I've never seen a pump like this. Like, what is this? And I had the Spectra as well. And so yeah, I washed and sterilized all the parts, per the manual and some videos that I watched on YouTube. And then I started a pump, but then it was so painful. It was
Uh,
so painful. De por sí, like
no.
my nipples were sore because like baby couldn't latch, and that was one of the reasons why
Right.
there were issues. And then with pumping, it made it worse. And I'm like, what is going on? And luckily, I had a mom friend who our babies were like 3 weeks apart from each other. And she's like, well, is your nipple just like is it only like catching your nipple or is it the whole thing? And I'm like, no, it's catching the nipple. Well, here I am thinking that the nipple was part of the areola too. So I thought that the entire thing
Oh,
was supposed to like be a
yes.
part of that like suction through the
Oh man.
flange. Yeah. And
Ouch.
again, I didn't know like that in the anatomy of a breast, right? That there are different
Yes.
parts, right? That there are different categories, different names. And I think again, it's because like it all depends how you grew up, right? And especially as Latinas, like I didn't even know that your nipple is different than your areola.
Right. People don't know
So
that.
no, no. And the thing is that these companies too are only providing two sizes, either the 20, the
Yeah.
24, like what is it, millimeters?
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
millimeters.
Yes, millimeters before I say meters or something.
Oh
Uh,
my God.
yeah. And so I was just like mind blown when I heard that you're supposed to get sized for flanges if your intention is to pump. And
Yes.
can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Yeah. First of all, nipple and areola, this is an awesome anatomy lesson. So the nipple is the part that usually protrudes. Some nipples are inverted or flat, but the area, like the circle around your nipple, is called the areola. That part should not be getting pulled into your flange when you're pumping. We only want to see the nipple being pulled into the flange, and it shouldn't be rubbing or squeezing or causing pain. So we do size the nipple, we measure it, and then we also observe a pumping session to make sure, because nipples change once you start pumping. They stretch, they expand a little bit. So even if we say like, oh, you're a 24, you might not be a 24 once you start pumping. So that's why we like to see what it looks like while you're using it. And like you said, a lot of pumps come with a 24 and usually a 28 or 27, something in that range. We're finding that a lot of people have smaller nipples than that, and that the flanges that are coming with the pumps are too big for a lot of people. So that's another reason why it's really important to get sized ahead of time, so that if you need to order a smaller size, you can order a smaller size flange and be ready once your baby arrives if you need to pump once they're here.
Thanks for explaining
Of
that.
course. Of course,
Yeah,
that's a
because
huge question that people have, and people just don't
yeah,
know.
no, we don't know. And again, going back to like our bodies, like really knowing our bodies, and it does make it hard. Like again, you assume that lactation is going to come natural, right? But like as working women or as women who perhaps want to get away, and we have I wouldn't say the luxury, but we have that awesome accessible like opportunity to pump, right? Like
Yes.
unless we don't know the mechanisms or like even as far as like flange sizes, like if we don't know, then that's going to make us want to stop, right? That's going to make us want to
Yes.
like discontinue using it because first of all, pumping, I mean, I didn't mind it, but it's such a hassle, right? Putting it on,
Yeah, it's a
cleaning
pain.
parts, and yeah, it is a full process.
Yes.
But if we know like how to really use it, how to really like trust the process, if we were sized appropriately with like flanges, I think it wouldn't cause so many barriers too, you know?
Yes. And pumping shouldn't hurt. So if you're in
Yeah.
pain with pumping, it might be your flange size and it might be that you have it turned up too high.
Mm.
People sometimes don't see milk coming out as fast as they want and they crank the pump up and it's causing more pain and damage. And if you're in pain, You can't have a milk letdown. So it's a vicious cycle. If you're in pain with pumping, something's not right.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so interesting. Yeah, I'm just like thinking back and I'm like, yeah, I didn't even know how to use this pump, you know. And my mom,
Oh
like
my
she
gosh.
had the manual one, right? Where it's like that little like
Yeah.
bicycle
Pump it
horn
with your
thing, the
hand.
pump. Yeah. She's like, yo no sé qué son estas cosas. And I'm like, I don't know either. Like I just got it delivered. And that's the thing, like it causes so many barriers. Like unless you go with a lactation consultant, you know, an IBCLC, like unless you actually like advocate for yourself, then things can perhaps go in the right direction. But otherwise, like, you know, it is such an intimidating, vulnerable moment, especially postpartum, right? Oh, it's so
Absolutely.
complicated. And so with pumping, when can people start pumping? And I know it all varies depending on the situation, but when do you usually recommend for mom to start pumping?
Yeah, it depends on their goal, but if the goal is exclusive breastfeeding, exclusive latching, and if everything's going well with that, like we don't have concerns about baby's weight gain, they're peeing and pooping great, there's no soreness or concerns about milk supply, usually you want to wait to start pumping for at least 2 to 3 weeks while lactation's being established. So while the milk supply is getting established, while baby's really getting a good latch and learning that process. So it doesn't have to be done right away. You can even wait a little longer if things are going well and you don't have a need or want to start pumping. And then some people start pumping sooner because they might need to give their baby a little extra milk by pumping that milk for them. Like if the latch isn't where it needs to be yet, or if there are concerns about milk supply or weight gain, any other medical conditions that we need to give the baby a little extra milk, we might have the mom start pumping sooner.
Okay.
And then, like, if a baby ends up being separated from the parent in the NICU or something, we would have them pump right away. Because if we don't remove the milk, this is something we haven't mentioned yet. If you don't remove the milk and stimulate, we're not telling the body to produce milk. So it's a system of supply and demand. So you want to be pumping and taking milk out and stimulating your body every time your baby would have been feeding. So for a newborn, that's about every 3 hours,
Okay.
roughly, if the
Roughly,
baby's
yeah.
in the NICU. Yeah, if they're latching, it's on demand whenever they want to eat. It's probably going to be more frequently than every 3 hours, but at least every 3 hours.
And do all IBCLCs, are they like trained to help moms with pumping, or do you need to find a specific IBCLC that sort of specializes in pumping or perhaps are more knowledgeable? Like, how would you be able to distinguish that?
I think that we're all trained in pumping and support. That's a key part of what we do is
Okay.
supporting parents with that. And some of us delve into it a little bit more. Like I've looked into different pumps more and like learned about all the different types of pumps, but all lactation consultants should be able to support a parent with pumping.
Is there any kind of like additional resources that you would recommend seeking as a mom is preparing to decide whether if she wants to exclusively pump or just pump at work or pump any time during their lactation journey? What kind of resources would you like to share?
Kelly Mom is a great website for evidence-based information about everything lactation. And then I think deciding whether or not you're going to exclusively pump, I think it's very personal.
Mhm.
I think that's a very personal decision because some people have trauma that they are adverse to latching their baby and they just know that pumping is the way they want to go. Maybe they've had a bad experience in the past with lactation and they just are like, nope, this time I'm just pumping. So it's a very personal decision, I think, on and some people decide after their baby comes and they've tried everything and latching just never gets comfortable for them for one reason or another and they just decide to pump and that's amazing too because we're still giving that baby all that human milk and they're still getting all the benefits.
Yes. Yes, that's great. Yes, I'll make sure to share Kelly Mom because I also used that website as part of my journey, and I'll
You
obviously
did.
include
Yeah.
you as well because you show
Oh,
so
thank you.
many awesome examples and different products, even like the different flange sizes that, yeah, for me, I'm still like fixed with just because, yeah, that was a crazy journey for me.
Oh
But
my
yeah, you do
gosh.
provide a lot of helpful resources, so I'll make sure to include those as well. Yeah, in the show notes.
Yay! Something else, another good resource for people who want to find out if they're eligible for insurance covered visits. There is a network called the Lactation Network, and it's like a quick 5-minute application, and you can see if your insurance will cover free lactation visits without you having to go through all kind of the steps we talked about before. They kind of do the hard work for you. So if they work with your insurance, it can be a great option for people to
That's
get.
great.
They used to do 6 visits, and now they're doing almost unlimited visits if you're approved through them. So it's real. It makes it really easy for parents.
Yeah, that's great. And is there like a way to select like if you have a preference, right, in working with like a Latina IBCLC or Spanish speaking IBCLC specifically?
Yes,
Okay.
they do have that option. Yeah, and
Oh,
you can
great.
get paired with someone locally or online or work with someone who speaks your language. They do you I think you can even select whether or not you want someone who has been vaccinated versus someone who hasn't been vaccinated for COVID. So they give you some options.
I'm learning so much and I'm excited because I'm expecting babies soon
I
at
know
the
you
time
got to
of
do
this
this.
recording. Yes. Oh, that's great. Yeah. So many lessons learned from the first one, let me tell you. Like,
Oh gosh, right?
yeah, yeah, so many lessons learned, but I do take it with grace and I do take it as an experience, and this is a way of me of like I've learned how to heal with it. Once I relactated, I still supplemented, but at least I knew that my son had half of what I was able to provide. And for me, like that gave me so much comfort,
That's
just
amazing.
yeah, knowing that I got my body to produce back again. Like for me, that was a success story. And I
That
feel
is
like
so amazing.
yeah, thanks. And I feel like so many women are so infatuated with like the amount of milk. Like I had a conversation with a mom a couple weeks ago and she talked about how she was just enougher. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? Or,
Mm.
you see images about like all this like stacked milk and like deep freezers. And a lot of times we're like, well, am I not giving my baby enough? What would you respond to that comparison trap within lactating moms?
I feel like social media, again, perpetuates this a little bit, that having the huge stash in your freezer, that's not necessary. If you're giving your baby enough milk for them to grow and be nourished, that is more than enough. And if you aren't able to give them all the milk they need and you make half or a quarter or one bottle a day of milk for them, that is amazing. That milk has been made with love, and that milk is still going to give them all those benefits of receiving human milk that we hear about, and the reason we decide to give our babies human milk. So you're not any less of a good mom or any less of anything because you are giving your baby half of the human milk. That is amazing. It's such hard work. Some people who have low supply are working so much harder than people who have a full supply or oversupply
Mhm.
to give that one bottle a day to their baby. So there just shouldn't be comparison. I don't like the comparison game among moms, and that's perpetuated on social media. If you're making milk for your baby, you're a superhero in my eyes. So.
That's great. I know. That's the beauty of like our bodies that no one else is able to do this besides us women, and especially when we have a baby, like I think that's what makes it so special and you have that bond and just like that connection. Yeah, like my son weaned when I was like 3 months pregnant. He just stopped. Like he
Wow,
felt yeah, so he was like 20 months. Yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah, and we didn't do like a ceremony. I was just expecting him to like, go on with his routine like every morning and he just stopped. He just like was like, I want to play. And so for me it was like sad because I didn't do like an
Yeah.
official ceremony or just like an official goodbye or whatever, but it's such a wonderful feeling that we were able to do this together. And he also taught me to just like give myself grace. Like he was fine with formula. He was fine with any bottle and he was fine on my breast. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like if you put yourself in that perspective of how open, your baby can be and how I should give myself grace, just like how he was also giving himself
Absolutely.
grace. Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah, I think it's all about giving yourself grace and
yeah.
babies feed off our energy too. So like if we're
Yes.
really stressed out about why isn't my baby latching and why am I not making milk, they pick up on that. And if you're just like struggling, it's normal to struggle, but try to take some deep breaths, try to not put too much pressure on you or your baby and just like take a break if you need a break and then try again later on or the next day or whenever you're ready to try again.
Well, now I have some Viva la Mami motherhood questions that I ask all my guests
Yeah.
here on the show. And so the first question I have is what still surprises you about being a mommy?
How fun it is. It's so much fun. I became a mom when I was a little bit older, and I think I spent a lot of my like late 20s and early 30s debating on what it was going to look like to be a parent. And I heard how hard it was and it's so much fun. I mean, of course it's hard. Of course there are hard days, but it's so enjoyable to me just to spend time with my daughter and see her grow and make her laugh and all the things.
Oh, and how old is she?
She's 18 months.
Oh,
Yeah, she's still pretty little.
that's a fun age. Yeah, it's such a fun age because they're just like becoming more
My
aware of
gosh.
themselves and their
Yes.
environment.
She's a
Yeah.
parrot. She copies everything we say.
What is one tip of advice you have for Latina mommies?
I think that there's a lot of pressure on mamás to hacer todo and just you can't do it all. It's okay to feel overwhelmed sometimes. It's so much like to be the mom and the professional and keep the house and all the things that we're expected to do. I think that just giving yourself grace again, asking for help when you need it, and not being afraid to ask for help. It's not shameful to ask for help from your partner, from your family members, from friends, and even professional help if you're facing some difficult times. It's a really beautiful and a really hard time, especially when you have a little one at home.
What is your meaning of motherhood?
Just being present for my daughter, making sure that I enjoy the day-to-day things that we do and not rushing through our routines and just kind of soaking it all in and then making her, have a happy life and feel loved and help her reach her full potential.
And Cassie, where can people follow you?
Yeah, so I can be found at www.kassireyes.com or I can be found on YouTube. My channel is Kassi Reyes.
I'll share it in the show notes, and that way people can find you and just like find all the amazing resources that you share because you not only talk about like pumping and like different pumps, but definitely about like latching, right? Like how to build a milk supply, relactation. That's how I found you. And
Oh my
yeah,
gosh,
yeah, so many amazing
thank
resources.
you.
Yeah.
And one thing that I want to say, and I won't go too deep into it
No,
because I
no,
do
it's
have a
okay.
video about it, but I struggled so much on my lactation journey, and I share about that on my channel. And I thought it was going to be hard. I knew it was going to be hard for me, and I was already a lactation consultant, but we really struggled for it. We struggled for 4 months,
Wow.
and I wanted to quit for that first 4 months. And so I just want people to know that it's normal and you're not alone and it can be really difficult and I'm happy that I had support and the knowledge that I had and it's not really easy for anyone, so it's okay to take a break. Like I said, it's okay. Like protect your milk supply, pump if you need to pump, take a break from latching if it's painful and then come back to it when you're in a better place.
Right. Right. Yes, that's a really great way of wrapping this because I everyone's story is so different and oftentimes we don't know too. Like you just assume that everyone's lactation journey should be the same, right? But there's so many nuances
Yes.
and there's so many, I think, just like overall difficulties that can occur. And I think we need to be okay with it. Going back with giving yourself grace, right? Giving yourself time, seeking the right support. I think that really matters if obviously you want to keep going with this breastfeeding goal. And if not, there's no shame. Like, and that's the thing
Right.
that I, kept reflecting. I'm like, do I really want to commit to relactation? Because that is hard.
Yeah.
You're literally in a specific schedule as if you had a newborn. So it's almost like I had a newborn all over, being on the pump every 2 to 3 hours,
Right.
plus tending for my, infant as well. And so not everything is going to be the same for everyone. Not everyone is going to take it the same, but like, again, I think just depending on your goals, depending on what you want out of your journey, there is help and there are support systems out there, but it just depends
Yeah.
on what you want out of it too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no pressure. I mean, we're here to support families and what their goals are. And like you said, everyone's goals are different and everyone knows themselves, their mental health, their situation, and what's going to push them over the edge or what's going to be good for them. So support's here and there's no pressure. It's just helping you reach your goals and whatever that looks like for you.
Yes, that's great. And you said you offer virtual visits?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
That booking is on my website. We'll share that. But yeah, I can work with anyone wherever you're located. We can do pump consults, prenatal consults, and even postpartum stuff. So yeah, I love working with people virtually.
Kassi, thank you so much for being here. It's an honor. I was almost like fangirling because like I've been following you for over 2 years now. And yeah, I finally get to have you here in the show and just for you to share your expertise and the fact that you're Latina, it's just amazing. So
Oh,
thank you
thank you.
so much for being here. It's an honor.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to the Viva la Mami podcast. If you like this episode, make sure to leave a review and write what episode really resonated with you. If you really loved it, share it on social media or with an amiga. As always, please subscribe to this podcast wherever you are listening. Make sure to follow me at Viva la Mami on Instagram or visit vivalamami.com. Please note the information shared in this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be replaced by your healthcare provider nor taken as professional advice.